guess we're rolling, right? So this is episode 9 of What the Fuck Do I Know podcast, WTF. I know it's a funny name, but you know why it is.
I love it.
I'm here with the lovely and brilliant Sierra Monét. Well, at the end, we had wardrobe part here. I'll do this. That better? My bad. No, thank you, man. See, that's why he's behind the camera, making sure that everything's according. See, I have wardrobe problems, but she obviously has some fresh kicks. Like, what's she doing? She only got laces, fam. I don't go ahead. Look at that. Talk to him. You know, she came through stepping. She had to step. So, man, you know, I have to. You've been here in Northwest Arkansas 4, 5, 6?
Ooh, 8.
8 years.
8. Whew, I can't even believe it.
So something I really want to touch on and talk about is your involvement in bringing people together, especially in the black community in Northwest Arkansas that sometimes doesn't get the attention, especially because the history isn't there yet. And I think that something with the Black Expo, with Black Ground, I believe.
Black Ground, yes.
And I mean, I was lucky enough to go to the first Black Expo, try some delicious food, buy some great books, some great clothing. Got my mom something there for Valentine's Day too. I'm just saying, this time is on the 26th.
It is.
But can you speak a little bit more on how you're bringing people together?
Yes. So first, thank you for having me. Like, I really appreciate it. It's dope to be in the studio, seeing where all the magic happens. So thank you. I've been in Arkansas for 8 years, so I was here long enough to see what life was like before any of that existed. So I think that was part of the thing that really inspired it. Like, my friends and I, Jasmine and Jay, who are the founders of Black Owned NWA and Jazzy J NWA, a lot of the things that they're doing and the magic and spaces that they're creating came from our experiences as people who relocated here for corporate America, but didn't necessarily see any opportunity to connect with other people like us. A lot of spaces in corporate America are designed for talent that does not look like us. So when we relocated here, we really just wanted to be a part of creating that change. With the expo, it kind of started out as, again, us creating that change. When we moved here, we didn't know necessarily where to go to get our hair done. We didn't know where to go if we wanted to get some oxtail or have some goat for, a holiday dinner or whatever. So we kind of just started creating that list ourselves and holding it to ourselves. And then once we met other people, we would share it with them. People who were relocating to work at Walmart or work at Tyson or JB Hunt, just creating that for that community in particular.
How's that adventure from corporate America? Because, like, see, the thing is, like, you got culture, right? And the thing is, like, culture doesn't mean you're not business savvy. It doesn't mean you're not intelligent. It doesn't mean none of those things. It means you're able to cultivate in a space regardless of what it looks like. And so you're in corporate America with all people that are kind of like, I don't know, for lack of a better word, I don't want to say bland. I want to say the seasoning's not there.
No spice.
Right. So you get there, and I know Jazz and Jay, they got spice too. So, like, they're happy. They're, like, always smiling. They're always trying to give you good energy. And so y'all three get together and y'all start, hey, like how was it meeting the first time you had, like, Jamaican food in Northwest Arkansas, or the first time you had African food? And it's like, because that wasn't, at least for me, like, that wasn't here when and I've been here 13 years. So now that I have the opportunity to go to things like that, and I'm like, whoa, there's culture here. We just got to go find it.
Honestly, having people like you who wish it existed before we had to create it is part of the inspiration. Like, when we started with the Black Owned Expo, it was kind of a trial by fire thing. We were just doing it and building it as they come. The saying is build and they will come, right? So at first we were like, hey, we don't know if this is going to work. We don't know if anybody's going to show up. We don't even know if we're going to have any vendors, but we're going to try it. And the first time we did it, we had 35 vendors and over 400 people came. Like, that's not something that we anticipated. That's not something that we had expected, but we definitely tried to plan for it just because we know how much of a need it was for us. So we was hoping that it would be a need for everybody else. And just to see the way that everybody in the community has received it has been unbelievable, even to the point where now we're seeing so many people try to like regurgitate it or create their own. On one hand, it's inspiring, but on the other hand, it's like maybe if you had, instead of trying to create your own, tap into the people that are doing it already, maybe that could have been another opportunity too.
No, and thank you so much for going through that, because I know how a lot of things sometimes feel like you don't know how it's going to turn out, and when it turns out in a way where you don't expect it, it makes you not only happy, but it inspires you to keep going. And now you're about to have the third or the fourth.
This is going to be the third annual one. We're excited, and with every one that we do, we try to design it so that it's actually meeting needs for the vendors specifically. Like if their only goal is to come there and make some sales, we want to make sure that they're making those sales. When we have different sponsors in the community that are a part of it, we're making that relationship so that we can hopefully close that gap between corporate and community. One thing that we see is that a lot of business owners, there's a huge push on entrepreneurship, right? Especially in Northwest Arkansas, because we're in, Walmart's backyard. That's entrepreneur land, right?
No, Bentonville, the backyard. We over here in chicken country.
Yes, Bentonville. I like Springdale a little better, personally, but that's just me. But being in the Northwest Arkansas area, kind of catching that entrepreneurship bug, we're trying to reroute a lot of these resources and opportunities so that they're actually connecting to people of color and Black and brown people in the community in particular. So when we partner with a co-working community to do the expo, we're saying, okay, you have a co-working space. Some of the vendors in our community need office space. As a part of you being a sponsor for this event, would you also be open to providing them with the complimentary membership to your co-working space? Would you also be open to just collaborating with them on space or retail opportunities or different things that can help their business grow too? So we definitely try to do it in a way to where it's mutually beneficial and not exploitive or something that people aren't actually benefiting from, which I think is a lens that a lot of people don't necessarily have when they're building things for the first time.
Something you say often, and I hear you say it a lot, is language is important, right? So how is it when you're trying to make those establishing connections between resources and people in need or could benefit from them? How do you approach? You know what I'm saying?
That's a good question. I say language is important because words mean things, right? Like, and one of the things that I take very personally and I don't take for granted as someone who has that corporate background is the ways in which a lot of corporate language, when it's being spoken from people that are up here, so to speak, when they're translating or having those conversations with people that they deem inferior, they intentionally try to use language that will throw them off or will, try to, in some ways, prevent them from advocating for themselves, right? So in a lot of spaces that we're in, especially trying to close this gap between community and culture, a lot of people are really banking on the fact that you may not know corporate language or you may not know how to navigate in business environments, but also, speak to everyday people in the same way. And that's just something that I don't take lightly, like me being able to translate between both spaces and maneuver. Yeah,
is next level. No,
it's
I'm
code switching definitely, but I think it's
an integrated program. It's like what you're saying is like I speak fluently to communicate, regardless of syntax or however you may look at it.
Yep.
And so that's boss, right? Like that's some boss level energy. That's some, like, I don't sound white. I sound educated. I sound like I know what I'm talking about.
And that's also a part of it, because I hate that it's deemed as sounding white. Like, and even to try and connect it to education, it's language, it's communicating. Like, even if you haven't gotten a PhD or you haven't gotten a master's or a bachelor's degree, you're not dumb. Right. And a lot of people try to treat you like you're dumb because you may not know a certain language or because you may have a certain accent in your voice or whatever. But one of the ways in which we try to do that is to show a lot of the similarities between different cultures, different communities, people being people, and the ways in which they really do just come together a lot of times.
We were talking about a little bit earlier off camera about IP address, and we were talking about
Intellectual property.
Right. Intellectual. My IP address is that stuff, right? It's the
Yes.
computer stuff. Again, language. Because sometimes Manny be talking about camera stuff, like he be talking about shutter speed, aperture, and a whole bunch of
Yes.
things, and then I'm like, yeah, that stuff. You know, but it's important because I don't know if you're familiar with the Tower of Babel, at least the story in the Bible, which I'm not super religious, but I do acquaint myself with certain religious texts at times because I think certain stories have a lot of relevance. So you're talking about communication and you're talking about gatekeeping in it because people try to make you feel inferior.
Yep.
Well, at a certain point in time in human history, apparently all people could communicate, right? So doctors could communicate with architects in the same language, right? And so the carpenter understood what the plumber did, and so did like the mathematician understood the person in English, right? Or literature. All of that combined led them to build a tower so close to heaven that God was like, I'm going to switch it up on you. I'm going to make y'all all speak different languages. And so in a way, like sometimes it's how I feel this certain, like we all have the tools to speak the same language, but we all decide to find a way to divide. And it's so, I don't like, I want to try to find a way to make the seam come close and close it. And if, and I don't know if that's community, you know? I don't know. It's just, again, philosophical questions.
I like the question, and I don't know if I have an answer, but one way that I think about that is in the structure of classism. If in a perfect world, there were no such things as marginalization, right? Where people feel like, oh, I'm better than you, or oh, I'm up here and you're up there, whatever. Or this understanding of class where it's like rich and poor. If none of that existed, then there wouldn't be this hierarchy, right? There wouldn't be this model or system in society where there are people at the top and people at the bottom, and there's a whole entire structure built around that. In my opinion, it was designed that way specifically to keep the people from uniting and seeing, oh, we're actually all better than this, and we actually can elevate each other in the way that in which your example explained. But that's just me.
No,
being
that's beautiful.
cynical.
You're talking about no. You're not being cynical. You're looking at it in a sense as like you see what's dividing, and you see, well, if instead of building taller buildings, we built buildings that were wider, and kind of people had opinions in it. What's bothering me is sometimes people feel like they can't lead, or in other words, they don't have that power to also be a leader, if that makes sense. And that's something where I'm kind of like, you've been scared or you've been pushed into believing that.
Yeah.
But your power is just as much as the next person as long as you believe. And so that character of faith is one thing where I'm like, how do I inspire people without preaching, but at the same time not being preachy, if that makes sense? Like finding the balance and nuance between, you know, like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, but still being like you know?
Yeah. I think that kind of goes into one of the things I was thinking about earlier is just being authentic. Like some people are going to think it's preachy. Some people are going to think it's just you being real. And I think it's up to people and where they are in their journey and whether or not they're at a point where they can receive that, regardless of how you kind of present it to them.
So keeping it real, because we're keeping it real.
We are,
right?
Always.
How is it that these nonprofits take real ideas and don't give credit for real, you know?
Whew, that's a question.
You know what I'm saying? Keeping it too real.
When keeping it real goes wrong or goes right. No. Great question. And tying that back to intellectual property, like a lot of times people don't understand how to use intellectual property to their benefit. And the people who are in corporations, enterprises, and nonprofits, they do. And you as well as I know that culture moves everything forward. Without it, nothing would move. Everything would be stagnant without culture. And there are people who have figured out how to monetize and own culture through intellectual property and are working so diligently to try and prevent the average person from breaking that code.
Right, some Disney-esque type shit where it's like we own everything,
Yeah.
watch everything,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, we can do that too. We just don't. We believe that we need the giant bank account or we need the giant this or that, but like, you'd be surprised, especially this day and age, how crazy it is that your phone can make you, if you believe,
Yeah.
you know, and that's the tough part of like, you can fight it or you can get with it, and at the same time you can find a balance between it. Cause I still love Moana and I'ma watch Moana, but like I don't have to watch Disney every day.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
And I think that's kind of the happy medium, or maybe not even happy medium, but that's just the part of it that a lot of people are still trying to figure out. Like when we talk about the structure of capitalism and how so many people are reluctant to participate, but also gotta pay bills, also gotta feed themselves, right? So it's really interesting because like one of the things that I try and coach people and help people understand in my business is the ways in which intellectual property can be leveraged for their benefit very early on in your business, no matter if you just started it this year or you've been in the game for 5 and 10 years.
And can you give us some quick tips real quick?
I mean, the first part is just owning some type of intellectual property. So whether it's a copyright, a trademark, or a patent, and understanding how those three different things can be beneficial in your business.
Trademarking or patenting? Like, let's say I wrote a song, right, and I got their original composition. How do I go about that?
Great question. First, I would say talk to an intellectual property lawyer. A lot of intellectual property lawyers will talk to you for free. I know people hear the word lawyer and just automatically kind of like scared, but a lot of lawyers will dedicate 15, 20 minutes to their community for free. And that's just for you to pick their brain at no cost.
Shout out to the lawyers.
Shout out to some of the lawyers because they will do that. And at the same time, there are people that are charging hundreds of dollars for just a conversation. But there are people out here who would do it for free. If you are thinking about going the patent option, the government trademark company, USPTO, they want people to file patents. So they have a program where you can get a patent lawyer for pro bono. So there are ways to go about it. It's just kind of not letting the scariness part of it or the unfamiliarity part of it hinder or prevent you. Because a lot of times that's what they're banking on. Like, people want you to say, oh, lawyer, nope, I'm going to stay clear of that. And just avoid it because that's going to prevent you from owning that intellectual property. That's going to prevent you from ownership, period. And as we all know, they don't want you to own. They don't want you to own your things.
Don't fear success.
Don't fear success. Don't fear ownership. And ask questions. Ask questions. Like, even if you feel like it's a dumb question, ask.
Right. Speaking of dumb questions. No, listen. Because I have to bring this up in relevance. So we have a friend, a mutual friend of all friends of the podcast. His name will remain anonymous in order not to make him feel guilty about this story. This is a hilarious story. Let me tell you something. This man wanted me to sue somebody for him based on an idea of stuffed crust pepperoni pizza because he said he thought about the idea first before Pizza Hut. And he was trying to tell me to sue Pizza Hut on behalf of him. And I was like, see, if you had thought about the idea, you should have done the idea and contacted a lawyer.
I'm glad you didn't try to sue on his behalf.
I couldn't. What would the premise be? Hey, my friend had thought.
An idea, yeah.
Like, did you document the thought? I don't know, dream guy. Like, come on. Work with me here. Work with me.
To your question, I don't know if I answered it earlier, but you asked how would somebody go about getting a copyright. Didn't you ask that? So yeah, part of it is talking to an intellectual property lawyer. I would also just suggest to learn, like, go to the USPTO website. They got videos where you can understand what is a trademark first, what is a copyright, what are the differences, and understand which one is going to be better or more beneficial for you. There are just so many resources out there that could be a part of just understanding it, but you have to know, like, if you specifically want to copyright a song, how are you going to monetize that? That's a part of like the intellectual property plan as well. So that's also the benefit to talking to an intellectual property lawyer, because they can help you understand the different nuances that are a part of it. Because it's one thing to have an idea. Like your friend could have had the stuffed cheese pizza idea, and if he didn't talk to an intellectual property lawyer about it,
right,
what's it really doing?
it's like the person that did Heelys. I'm pretty sure he probably had the idea and was like, you know what, this is a great idea. I might have to talk to somebody about patenting this. You know, and now he made big bucks off of putting wheels on shoes. Like, you know, anything's possible if that's possible. I'm just saying. Look, I don't know if you remember the Sham Wow. I'm pretty sure that was, you know, it was just a extra absorbent towel. But that guy, I mean, if you got Willie Mays out here promoting your stuff, you're gonna do something.
I mean, you got options, and I know a lot of times just the thought of even hiring a lawyer could also be a hindrance too. Some lawyers, like I said, they'll give you their time for free for a consultation. Some lawyers might even like take you under their wing as more of a mentee type of thing and coach you through
how do we set that up? Let's do that. Let's
process.
Make that happen. And lawyers, hit me up. We gotta get these. We gotta train people on at least like their basic rights. You know what I'm saying? And then the financial rights, so that they can't take advantage of us no more.
I mean, there are lawyers out here that preach that message as a part of the content that they share on their own social media. One of my good friends and mentors is an example of that. Her name is Angela Grayson, and she has a intellectual property law company called Precipice IP. But her specific focus is science and technology. So if you want to get into like that side of a business, then she'd be a great person to talk to specific to science and tech. But there are lawyers that focus on the music industry. There are lawyers that focus on medical industries. So you have to really niche it and tailor it to meet whatever needs you have first. But you got options for sure.
Speaking of options, what type of options going to be at the Black Expo February 26th at the Apollo?
At the Apollo on Emma, we are still nailing down all of the different vendors we're going to have. We're shooting for about 25 to 30 of them. We're definitely going to have food. We're definitely going to have some accessories like swag, you know, earrings, jewelry, all of that. We got a tea company, Asami Tea.
I love that tea, actually.
I do too.
Some great tea.
It's amazing. I drink it every day. What's your favorite? My favorite is the Serengeti Spice.
Dang, I wish I remember the name, but like, every tea on there is fire. Like it really is. Like,
it's good stuff.
I was wearing a daishiki at the moment when I bought. No, for real, when I was buying it from him, he told me the name of the actual print, and then he was like, explain to me that's where there's people, because I've had this before. Like I was on Dixon and somebody commented that I was culturally appropriating something, right? And then there's people,
people that educate you on it, and people that try to be like, "Oh, what you doing? Why you in that?"
Right, but the thing that's what's weird is it was a white guy trying to tell me that I was culturally appropriating. So I was like, hey yo. I'm like, watch your privilege, boy. Like, just chill. No, it's just like, the people that see me that I'm happy and I'm representing it are actually kind of like, hey, like, thank you. In a way, like, I'm sure some people might have a different opinion, but it's just kind of like, I love the print. I love what it stands for. And one of those things is like, when you go to the Black Expo, like, this is the culture that's here. And like, you know, support people that are here doing, you know, things that are expanding people's horizons, ideas, color palette, food taste, entertainment wise. Like there's so many amazing people. Like Mary's vegan. I never had a vegan brownie. I never had a vegan cookie, but they're good. You know what I'm saying? She found a way to make baking without milk and eggs good.
Amazing. I don't think she's going to be joining us this year, sadly, because she had, I guess she got so many sales from everything that she's been doing over the last few years that she paused on the business. But we hope to see her for the next expo in the summer. So stay tuned.
Actually, well, if that case, like, anybody looking for a job, you know where to hit up. You never know. You need help baking. You might turn into an expert baker. Baking I didn't know baking was such a big thing, but then I noticed how many, because now I'm working for like a fresh produce place that I'm like delivering things during the day. And I did not realize how many bakeries there is in Northwest Arkansas. Like there's all types of bakeries. There's an Asian bakery, there's a Mexican, Salvador. There's like all types of bakeries.
That's good to know.
I'm sorry, there's a lot of bread. That's what I'm saying. We're trying to get some bread out here.
One of my clients, she is in the world of like raising chickens, raising hens.
Sustainably?
Yes.
Not like,
I believe so.
Not like certain organizations and places here.
Yes, this is a small, intimate farm that she has just through her own projects and her just wanting to get more
Here in
into
Northwest
agriculture.
Arkansas?
She's in Northwest Arkansas. I forget the city, but I think
It's definitely not Springdale. I'll tell you why.
no.
It's illegal to have chickens in your backyard in Springdale
Because
because of you know who.
that's crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they have an actual ordinance. They were gonna fine my mom $500 because my FFA project was to take care of 24 chickens. So I hatched chickens, turned them to chicks, then like fed them all until we had like 14 chickens right here. And then they were like, some neighbor called and they were trying to fine my mom $500 for a school project.
Wow.
Think about that. It's crazy.
That's a great example of like gatekeeping though, because what if you were just trying to feed your people? Like
No, and 14 chickens, that's 14. If they all lay an egg, that's 14 eggs. I ain't got to worry about protein. But no.
Wow.
You know who you are. No.
Wow. I'm blown away.
You know why? Because they said that somehow the poop that was in my backyard was going to affect their chickens. How? How, Sway? How?
Lies, I'm sure. But yeah, I said that because she's actually wanting to get to a point where she can she has a surplus of eggs from the hens. So she's wanting to connect with some bakeries and like local produce spots. So she
can make that happen.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that offline.
Offline. Let's see. Black Expo.
Wait, so you're asking me all the questions. Let me ask you a question,
Oh, go
Sarah.
ahead.
What's your why?
What's my why?
What's your why? Like, you do so much, you give so much, you love so much. Like, what's your why?
My why is why not.
Mm.
That's all right. Hey, nah, hey.
It's so simple yet so profound.
No, yeah, it's like, I don't know. I got tired of feeling like there's a limit on what you can be and what you can accomplish versus the idea, like you said, like you have to reach a certain merit before you're of value. And that's not realistic, nor is that something that I choose to
subscribe to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel you.
And so acceptance plays a key role in like, man, like my life is so much more valuable when I open myself up to meet people, to care, to actually come up with ideas that nobody else would want to do because they feel it's a burden to them. But then you realize, like, when you move like that and more people come together and more people start to push with you, it's no longer a battle with yourself. Like, you're not alone. Like, it doesn't matter that I'm fighting. I can't get tired because the next person next to me is also pushing. And then I look to my other side and somebody else is pushing. And if somebody's having a bad day, somebody else behind them is pushing them. And so when you look at that, my why is because I got family. Like that, and that's as simple as it gets. It's like, why not us? Like, what's stopping us but us? So why not?
I love it. I love it. I'm inspired by the same things, just the people. I think that's the one thing that without it, it's like, what is there to do without the people, honestly? And just from the conversations that we've had today, like with the agriculture project, which I know you're going to ask about.
You can ask. Talk to him. Let him know.
So, how did that even happen? How did that
We
start?
were sitting over some Indian food, some tikka masala, some real good eating over at the Punjabi kitchen down in Springdale. Sierra doesn't really like spicy food. I love spicy food.
I blame my mom, but I'm getting more into it. I'm forced to eat more spicy food, and it's fine.
And so I think we were just talking, and then I kind of brought this project on as to, like, you saw more of the idea of, like, how do I bring my connections to the forefront, and how can I help you accomplish what you're trying to do? But really, it was more like, here's what I've got. This is what I've reached, and this is like the level I can't pass alone. Is there a way where like we help each other accomplish this?
Yes. So back to the conversation of like closing this gap between corporate and community. When you mentioned the garden project that you were working on, I don't know too many people. I know a good handful of people that are in the agriculture space, but I do know a good amount of people that are in architecture. And I just thought of the one person that I was emailing at the time and just put it on her radar like, hey, I know you guys are doing this. I know you may be into like certain community projects. Just, sharing this with you to see if it might be something that you're interested in. And when she initially responded, she kind of talked about donating some trees, donating a little bit here and there. But I think it was really your story and you like sharing your whole experience as part of your why that really inspired her company to then come back and say, no, actually we want to do master planning in the whole architecture project. Like that was all you.
That was us.
That was us, yes.
Yeah.
But it was definitely you. So kudos to you for that, because
No.
I can't wait to see what happens next.
I think that's what was crazy about life, is more things connect us and more things are communal and actual connecting in a way where like she shared her story about how she comes from a farming background, how she lives in a rural area. And I think what hits home is like it wasn't a corporation, it wasn't a nonprofit, it wasn't anybody who wanted to help this small little trailer park in the middle of the city, like literally a mile and a half from the big public buildings that they spent $40 million on and all that. But when our community was in crisis, when gas lines were broken, where kids didn't have heat and things like that were going on, nobody lent a helping hand, so we had to figure out how to help ourselves, right? Well, then we have Miss K, who said, here's how you start a community garden. Here's how you start doing all of this stuff. And to see us kind of push together and do that, it showed people that the resilience exists within people, not reliance on
external factors.
Right.
Yep.
And when she heard that, I bet you she went back to her boss and was like, yo, like, this is crazy. Like, you might want to hear the background of this story. And so Manny helping me make a video, and kind of like, we also got donations for this or that. Like, it's all organic and homegrown. Like, that's what people have to understand. In my experience is like, yeah, like, I'm done performing for certain crowds in order to get funds. I'm going to find a way to source it from what I know how to do, which is bring people together.
And that's the most important part that I think continues to inspire what I do, because I've seen just today far too many situations where people have an idea or they have a concept and they try and share it with the people that have the resources or the money or the power or whatever things they don't suspect to have. And then that organization goes and takes that idea, regurgitates it half-assly, and then
facts. No,
and then that person who had the initial idea is just kind of left flailing. So I really just love how you guys have kind of taken it upon yourself to say, okay, nobody on the outside is going to do it. How can we do it ourselves? And then from there,
and it wasn't from a lack of effort. We actually tried to work with a lot of people, synergetically with certain nonprofits, with certain people, and then got literally turned sideways in and out. And it was kind of like, see, the funny thing is, this started off at his house back when he lived outside the city limits. It was called the No Cap Boys as a podcast, and it was us fledging out no, for real, like a bunch of stuff. And then that ended, and then we worked with the Teen Action Support Center, and we started a podcast called Do What You Love. And from that, certain things got muddy in the waters with them, and then it became, what the fuck do I know? Because I thought no, for real, I was like, I thought keeping it real was gonna do something. I thought talking about what we love was gonna do something, and then I really realized I don't know shit. I don't know nothing, but I find solace in not knowing because I'm finding out things.
I think that's the part of it. And like you may not know things, but there's a lot that you do know, and there's a lot that you're willing to learn. And I think that's one of the things that probably like sets you apart from a lot of people, because a lot of people aren't willing to learn or willing to absorb new information, especially to the point where they can share it with other people. And one thing that we really try to do is like I'm not in the business of hoarding resources or information or access. Like I want everybody to access it. I want everybody to tap in. I want everybody to have the same resources and access that I may have or that the other person in front of me doesn't have. I want us all to win. And a lot of times society is not designed that way. So when people come along and decide, oh, we're going to change it, kind of shake tables in that way.
Absolutely. I gotta take you out to the farm because I feel like you really gonna like the farm. That there's actually about 1,200 pounds of beef sitting in the in the freezer over there that a friend bought because she started a farm out in West Fork, Prairie Grove area with her husband. She had 2 kids while having no electricity and found a way to manage all of that, living on solar, like living. I get what would that call? What was that called when they like living off grid living, but completely like a interesting sustainable idea for a small farm. But they're sitting about 4 acres and they're wanting to open it up to the people so that they can teach what they've learned. So, our homie Italo from Brazil lives in Miami, has no concept of what the outdoors are in. Then he comes to Arkansas, starts learning what all trees are, starts chopping down trees, starts telling you this type of tree burns at this temperature internally, and this is why it's used for certain things. This tree was used by the certain Native American tribe to do all of their and so like it's like I need that, I want that, because now I'm connecting the history of everything. And so what you're saying, like connecting, like she's not the plug, she's the outlet. Like she's making sure that the power is getting here, and that's ultimately what real power is about. I think that a real powerful person doesn't want power for him or herself, but wants it to disseminate into its people so that they understand they're powerful too.
But that also goes back to this notion of like classism and structural racism and all these things. Like it's designed that way because they don't want people to easily be able to access those things. Like it's all intentional. And one thing that my company Black Ground is founded on was the ways in which everything that's happened throughout history has been designed this way, but there are people who specifically were determined to circumvent that and to not let that hinder them or prevent them from whatever it was that they were trying to accomplish at the time.
Facts. I think Nipsey said it best. He designed himself. And I think that's what we're trying to do is over here. It's like, I see the program, but I don't want to be part of the program. Like, I got my own tools. And what's beautiful is that there's more people seeing that. And even if some people sleeping through life, like, I'm not trying to wake them up. I'm just trying to do me until they see, like, oh, I can do that too. Yeah, come on.
Yeah,
come on with it.
I 100% support that. Like, I'm definitely, I think at one point I was more so trying to convince people of like, oh, why you should get on board or why you should kind of focus on this thing. But now it's just like, all right, I'm doing this path. It's either you get with it or get lost.
No, for sure. I think that's, what is it? The moment you kind of stop caring what other people think, you start kind of living your truth. And it doesn't really have to make sense to somebody else as long as it makes sense to you. And sometimes making sense isn't everything, right? Like making money isn't everything. But finding a way to make the money the way that you want to is, I guess, liberating. And I think that's what we're all trying to find, is just like, how can we help each other find liberation away from certain circles that, you know, when you tied in that money, you can't really move because it's a tie. Like in some ways, like certain rappers might have a bunch of chains, but they're literal chains, like they're debt. And so I'm trying to teach people, like, would you rather have a chain full of debt or a farm full of animals feeding your family?
I think even what y'all have built, like in this studio here, is a great example of that too. Because like before, when you were working with other existing podcasts, you probably had to operate within their structure, or if it was under a nonprofit, like certain things you can and can't say. So it's great to see that you guys are like came out of that mold and just been able to kind of start your own. Like, I admire that. Good job,
Thank
guys.
you.
Good job.
Look at him.
And people need to see that. Like, I'm sure there's still youngins in y'all's community that look at y'all and are like inspired by y'all, whether y'all realize it or not. So I'm proud of
sometimes
you
it's
guys.
actually the youngins where I'm kind of surprised. The younger ones, sometimes people our age are kind of looking at it like, why y'all starting that now? Like, well, you know, like, shouldn't you have started that 5 years ago? I'm like, I don't know. You know, but we're doing it.
Age is a state of mind. I feel like you can do whatever, whenever, however. It's just.
I'm going to jump out of a plane next year. With a parachute, obviously.
I had got invited to do that some years ago, and I woke up that day and I was like, nah. I don't want to jump out of a plane today. I might do it one day, but.
No? You either?
I'll do it for content.
Now, we could jump. We do bungee jumping. Anybody down for that? Okay, what scares you? They're like, what's something that scares you or you have fear of?
You know what? Funny enough, just today I was writing in my journal talking about how I really don't think there is much that scares me, like truly fearful of. At one point, I won't say I was afraid of it, but I avoided like the spotlight. I avoided kind of being in the forefront of things because I always like to play the cut. I always like to just kind of be behind the scenes. I know everybody. I'm moving, kind of doing my own thing, but never really wanted to be in the spotlight because I just don't want it. Like, I'd rather share it with somebody else versus me kind of hog it for myself. But I also had recently realized that in some ways, me avoiding the spotlight is also a version of fear. Mm-hmm. So I'm coming out of that more and more and really forcing myself to get in front of the spotlight. Even though I've never been afraid to talk in front of people, I spoke at my high school graduation in front of like 2,000 people as a 18-year-old. So I've never been afraid to talk to people. I've just never really wanted to be.
Right, your preference was to be behind the
like
scenes.
I preferred it. But now I'm coming out of that more and more. So I guess that's one thing. But if anything, one thing that is more of a concern is just the ways in which society is just hell-bent on not letting people be themselves, not letting people.
We were just talking about that earlier today in context to one of our favorite rappers.
Who?
So one of our favorite rappers, Isaiah Rashad. I don't know if you know who.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that.
And the thing that happened with him. Right, so we were like, not that it matters to us because that's his personal thing, right? But it also kind of like, to not have, I don't know, because I'm pretty sure that was without his discretion, right? Mm-hmm. So then things like that get outed in the world, and then he has to deal with that social pressure, and then like you got a bunch of fans feeling one way or the other, and it's like, damn, like.
And it's like whoever released that video without his permission probably did that with malicious intent.
Right.
And thinking, oh, he think he a poppin' rapper, like let me bring him back down to
earth. Yeah.
And like that's a great example of just the ways in which the world wants you to fit in this box. And I think a part of like the things that we do as creatives, as artists, as talented people are just do what we want, create however we see fit. You know, we don't allow ourselves to be stuck in a box. So even to the point where, you know, I'm consulting on an agriculture project. Like, what?
It's like, I don't know about chickens, but I'm down. No, but I think living in fear, I think that's kind of the American way. And it sounds like the American nightmare over the American dream. You know, to get all, you know, poetic and shit. I'm just saying, like, fear is what dominates the culture in oppression. I think what dominates the culture of resistance is joy. And so when you're trying to take somebody's joy away, like that person did to Isaiah, it's kind of like you are the antagonist and not the person you like. You got your own problems that you got to deal with. And instead of trying to break somebody down, how do we help you become a better version of you? because something that doesn't happen in America is rehabilitation. It's imprisonment and punishment over rehab. And I feel like that's something, that's a system we got to change. It's like, you did wrong, but let me teach you how to do right.
I mean, but it's also more profitable for them to not teach you how to rehabilitate yourself. So that goes back to
F
the
profit.
monetization
No,
of
I get you,
everything.
but it's like profit. At some point, money is just money. Like, it doesn't even, like, I don't know. After $500 million, what more you need? Like, what's the next million gonna do for you? Is what I'm saying.
Greed, man, does something to people.
Right, but then the people down here gonna exploit other people when they can't just go eat the millionaires. They can't just be like, hey, you know what? I think you got 3 or 4 Aston Martins, but I think you can live without one. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's just simple things in my mind that go like, hey, come on, bro. Like, you live in a gated community and there's a homeless guy right there asking for some change. Like, that's America. And sometimes what's sad is that, like, people across our countries, like across the border, be thinking that we're living lavishly, when in reality we're living under a certain regime of a system
Yeah.
that they don't understand. But just because the dollar is worth more than the certain currency that happens to be over there, does not mean our quality of life is inherently better. And that's something that I want people to understand. Like, I'm stuck between being Mexican, being American, and not being either one. I'm just kind of like free floating in limbo as a native human being of this continent that doesn't.
That's interesting too, because I know quite a few Black Americans who feel the same way.
We got to start our own nation. Fire Nation. I'm down. Who's down? Who's not down for Fire Nation?
Well, let's do like
Earth?
Earth.
That's it. I was about to say that's that.
Lava Nation. That's fire and earth together. And then water, Earth Nation. That's what we are, Earth Nation.
I mean, it's definitely a good point because I know the few times that I have traveled outside of the country, I always feel less anxiety when I'm like in a different country. Like, I just feel a little bit calm. Like, not feeling like I'm always on edge about white supremacy or structural racism or all these things that are a part of American culture a lot of times that people refute and deny, that sure absolutely do exist in other countries and regimes and everything as well, but I don't know, there's just some element to it that doesn't feel as blatant.
No, what's weird in America is you have to be perfect if you're brown or black. Or, like, you just, like, the only time you're celebrated is when your act of brilliance makes somebody else money or somebody else happy. Take, for example, the Hogs. And I'm not saying this to piss off people. I'm saying this because on certain things, it's like, you love that basketball team because it beats somebody else, right? But how do you treat those people outside when they're not basketball players and not winning you games says more than how you treat them and elevate them when they're making you profit. And that's what I really care about. It's like, we are all put on stages, and when we act like what we're supposed to act, then we're beneficiary. But the moment somebody steps out of line, oh, wait a minute. Right? And that, for example, like, that's why I guess one of my favorite, like, comedians are so necessary. Because, like, people like Dave Chappelle, people like Chris Rock, they always teeter the line of, like, is that too far? But really, what is the extent that's too far?
I mean, I think you don't know until you cross it a lot of times, or until you try in some cases. But I think one of the things that makes, like, comedians and artists and creatives important is because it starts a conversation. Like, regardless of who was right, who was wrong, people are talking about it. People are having that dialogue for the first time so that it can become less taboo and become less of this thing that people are scared to talk about, which I think is a benefit, especially because a lot of times people aren't communicating. People aren't breaking down those barriers or concerns or coming out of those boxes that people already put themselves in.
Speaking of communication, how can people get in contact with you, or how can people have more of these conversations?
Follow me on all the things at Blackground Biz. I took out all the vowels in that, so that's BLK.
That's how we used to do
GR.
notes in high school. at our class, like they taught us if you're gonna go to college, this is how you take notes. So like, it was funny. Like,
It's quick.
Yeah.
But yeah, follow me on all the things Blackground Biz at Blackground Biz. This year it's a lot in the pipeline, a lot in the works, but it's all around preaching the importance of ownership, preaching the importance of creativity, and helping people really just get to a point where they can create their own way, chart their own path, and create a life and a quality of life that they actually enjoy versus, you know, this 9-to-5 life that you may hate or may loathe or
no, we don't hate.
may not fit into. Because I know a lot of people felt like they didn't fit into the corporate community or corporate world. So
Well, we don't fit because that's not real.
it's also not how life should be. Like, we should be chilling eating grapes all day.
At least like 4 or 5 out of like. Really, it should be the other way around. You got a 5-day weekend and a 2-day work week. Like, I get behind that. You know what I'm saying? I'll hustle for the 2 days. I'll break my back. 12-hour days, you can put me. I got you. As long as the 5 days I'm chilling, kicking back, I'm good.
I mean, that's what I want to do ultimately. Just help people get to a point where they have a quality of life that they love living, specifically Black and brown people, because a lot of times we're doing what we got to do to get what we need to do done. It's always a requirement, not necessarily a choice. So I just want to see people living a life that they love and creating a life for themselves that they can thrive in.
Toast to that. If I had a glass, toast to that.
Clink,
Better
clink.
life come through. Subscribe, comment, follow episode 9 with the lovely and brilliant Sierra Monét.
Thank you.